All right, ladies and gents, Mr. Chris here. So we are going to go over our grammar lesson for today. Grammar for today is on pages 308, 309, 311, and 313. So I'm going to first tell you a little bit about the superhero sentences. So I'm pretty sure I've done this with you before in class, and so I'm just going to kind of recap in case you've forgotten about them. But superhero sentences are different types of sentences that can accomplish different things. So we first have the Superman sentence. A Superman sentence is a simple sentence. It accomplishes a lot. It's got a lot of punch, and it should be used sparingly. Just like Superman shouldn't be brought out to do everything. You can bring out Superman to accomplish big things. That's the case with a Superman sentence. It's got a subject and a verb, or two subjects and a verb, or two subjects and two verbs, but it does not have a comma and coordinating conjunction in it. It just basically says one thing. That's a Superman sentence. And then we have the Avengers sentences, and an Avengers sentence is a whole bunch of different things being said together. And so this is when you have it's actually one superhero joined to another superhero by a comma and a coordinating conjunction. But something I've noticed, I'm not a huge superhero fan, but I've noticed that from watching like Avengers movies or whatever, that sometimes there's a lot of chaos because there's so many superheroes all trying to work at the same time. And it could actually cause a lot of problems. And so superhero sentences are kind of like that. They're very powerful. They say a lot, but there's just so much going on that you should really use them quite sparingly. And then that brings us to our final kind of sentence, and that is a Batman and Robin sentence. A Batman and Robin sentence is also called a complex sentence. And I failed to mention this, but the Avenger sentence is also called a compound sentence. Anyway, on to Batman and Robin. So Batman and Robin is the superhero sentence. It's also called a complex sentence. And what it does is it joins together two different clauses, but just like with Batman and Robin, where one is certainly in charge and one is the sidekick, a complex sentence has one clause that is in charge and one clause that is the sidekick. Okay, so those are the superhero sentences. So let's begin. So our final unit here, we're going to be looking at these different kinds of sentences and being able to recognize and identify these different kinds of sentences. So let's begin with these definitions here on your page, on page 308. So these are very important. You need to know these 4 or 5 definitions to be able to do well on your test. Number 1, a clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a verb. It is used as part of a sentence. Number 2, an independent clause expresses a complete thought and can stand alone as a sentence. Number 3, a dependent or subordinate clause does not express a complete thought and cannot stand alone as a sentence. 4, a simple sentence contains one independent clause and no dependent or subordinate clauses. Both subject and verb may be compound. 5, a compound sentence contains 2 or more independent clauses, but no dependent or subordinate clauses. Okay, now there's some examples here of how exactly to spot those, but I think we'd be better off just going right down to the exercise. Let's go right to exercise A. 1, draw 1 line under each subject and 2 lines under each verb. 2, draw a box around the comma and conjunction or semicolon that joins the 2 parts of a compound sentence. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Number 1, I may tremble on the rock, but the rock never trembles under me. All right, so we're going to have to find our subjects and our verbs here. So let's go ahead and do that. So for the first part, we've got a verb that would be tremble. So you're going to grab a pencil and you're going to underline that twice. Now, who or what tremble? It's may tremble. There we go. It's a verb phrase. Who or what may tremble? I may tremble. Okay. Now notice that we have a comma and coordinating conjunction. So we're going to put a box around that right there, like that. And then we are going to get our next subject and verb. Now the next one is trembles. So we're going to circle that. Trembles. Who or what trembles? Rock trembles. And that's all we've got to do here. That's it. Okay, let's go ahead and do number 2 yet. Men are looking for better methods, but God is looking for better men. Okay, so our first verb is going to be are looking. Who or what are looking? Men are looking. And then we've got a comma and coordinating conjunction right here. You're going to box that. And then we have is looking back here. Who or what is looking? God is looking, and that's it. Okay, you can get numbers 3, 4, and 5 by yourself. Let's go to the next page, exercise B. Okay, draw one line under each subject and 2 lines under each verb. 2, draw a box around any commas and conjunctions or semicolons that join the 2 parts of compound sentences. 3, in the blank to the left of each sentence, write S if it is a simple sentence and compound if it is a compound sentence. Okay, 1. Henry Hudson and Martin Frobisher sought in vain for the Northwest Passage, a shortcut from England to China and the Pacific. Okay, so the first thing we can do that's really simple to be able to identify if this is compound or simple or a simple sentence is to simply look to see if we in fact have a comma and coordinating conjunction or a semicolon in the sentence. So if you'll notice, we do have a comma after Northwest Passage, but the next word after it is not a coordinating conjunction. Neither do we have a semicolon here. So this sentence is going to have to be simple, okay? But now that's not all we're doing here. We also have to find the subject and the verb. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's look for a verb here. All right, I'm seeing sought. Let's go ahead and underline sought. Who or what sought? Henry Hudson sought. Martin Frobisher sought. And that's it. That's all we need to do. Let's go to number 2. Magellan organized the first successful voyage around the world, but he was killed before the completion of the trip. All right, do you see a comma and coordinating conjunction or a semicolon? You betcha. Right here it is. Let's go ahead and put a box around it. So that means that we have to have a compound sentence here. Now, oops, I guess do we actually have to put a box? Yes, we do have to put a box. Okay. Okay, now we're left to find the subjects and the verbs yet. So we know we're going to have 2 different sets of subjects and verbs since this is a compound sentence. All right, so in the first sentence, I'm seeing organized, so I'm going to underline that twice. Who or what organized? Magellan organized. All right, and then in the second one, I'm going to see was killed. There we go. Who or what was killed? He was killed. All right, that's it. That's what you have to do for number 2. All right, now I'm going to let you get numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 all by yourselves. Okay, now we have one final exercise to get down here. Sorry, I had done this before and forgot to erase it. Okay, good. Now we have one final exercise to tackle here. And this is going to be the most complicated of them all. So number 1, draw one line under each subject and 2 lines under each verb. 2, draw a box around any commas and conjunctions or semicolons that join the 2 parts of compound sentences. And 3, in the blank below each sentence, write the formula that indicates the type of sentence. Okay, so this is what we had skipped over when we were looking at the definitions and stuff up here, this section here. Okay, so let's take a shot at this. Looks complicated, pretty straightforward. You'll get it figured out. Okay, so let's start by doing let's see if we can find a comma and coordinating conjunction or a semicolon first. And sure enough, here we have one. And so we know we have a compound sentence here, just like that. Okay, now let's find our subjects and verbs. Got carried away there. I got carried away. No, that is in fact a comma and coordinating conjunction, but it's not joining together 2 sentences. My bad there. All right, so erase that if you put that in there. My bad. Okay, so let's look for a verb. Who or what are? Pumpkins, cucumbers, squash are. And that's it. That's all we've got here. So now what we have to do is correctly identify or correctly label these things. And so what we have to do is look at the sentence from left to right and write subject every time we have a subject and verb every time we have a verb. And we need to also include any commas and coordinating conjunctions or semicolons. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so we start with the word pumpkins. So with the word pumpkins, we have S, okay? And then we have cucumbers, so we write S again. Then, since these are 3 items in a series, we're actually going to write and, like that, okay? S and S for squash, S and S. Now, you might wonder, why aren't we going to put the comma in here as well? Like why isn't it SS, comma, and S? Because it says pumpkins, cucumbers, comma, and squash. Well, the reason is that we're only ever going to use commas when we're using it along with a coordinating conjunction that is linking together it's like linking together 2 different clauses in a compound sentence. You're not going to use the commas otherwise. So it's going to be S, S, and S, and then we've got our verb V, and that's it. S, and S, V. All right. The point here is that we're recognizing that this is a simple sentence. Okay, let's do number 2. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you. Okay, now let's, instead of, I think my method the method I was using by looking for the comma and coordinating conjunction first, that led us actually to make a mistake in number 1 there. So let's not do that. Let's first just look for the verb and subject. So let's look at the first part here. So have not, have chosen. Okay, so we have a verb phrase, have chosen, underline that twice. Who or what have chosen? Ye have chosen. And then here we have a comma and coordinating conjunctions. Let's go ahead and box that. And then I have chosen. There we go. Okay, good. Oh, wait. Oh, we got one more back here. And ordained. There we go. I have chosen, ordained. Yes, okay. So we've got it all nailed down here. Now, let's get our subjects and verbs and everything correctly identified here. So we're going to start with the word ye, which is a subject. And then we have a verb phrase, have chosen. Now, you don't have to write 2 V's here for have chosen. You're just going to write 1 V to represent 1 verb phrase. So SV. And then we come to the comma and coordinating conjunction, but, like that. And you're actually going to put a boxer on it like that. And then we have a subject again, it's the word I, and then we have the verb have chosen, and then we have another verb back there. It's not, the have chosen and ordained are not part of the same verb phrase, and so we need to write 2 different V's. We're going to say SV and V. Now, we are going to say that this is compound, because we have two separate clauses being joined together. SV, SV, comma, but, in a box, SV, and V equals compound. Okay, I'm going to do one more with you, then let you have numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7 by yourselves. Let's do number 3. Homer and Virgil were 2 ancient poets. Okay, so let's look for our verb first. That would be were, who or what were, Homer, Virgil were, and that's it. So now we're going to write S for Homer, and S for Virgil, and V, and there's nothing else. That equals simple. Okay, you take a shot at numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, now we're going to leapfrog over this right here, and we're going to go to 311 instead. So I actually need to go back here. And there we go. There we go. Okay. So we're not going to deal with the diagramming because we have a crunched amount of time here, and so we're just going to jump. We're going to not do diagramming. Okay, so recognizing complex sentences. Let's jump to that. 1, a complex sentence contains 1 independent clause, that would be Batman, and 1 or more dependent subordinate clauses, that would be Robin. Okay, let's go to number 2. In some complex sentences containing a noun clause, the independent clause is not obvious because the noun clause is a part of the independent clause. I'll explain that more in just a bit. 3, independent clauses always have introductory words, sometimes understood, which means sometimes like they're not actually written, like an understood you, that join them to an independent clause. Who, whom, which, that, whose, after, although, as if, because, since, when, whenever, where, wherever, whether, while, etc. Okay, so the big thing you have to understand about these complex sentences is that they are called complex for a reason. Batman and Robin sentences are very powerful. They're cleaner than are the Avengers sentences, but they are very powerful. And so a while back, I talked to you about how the English language and the way that sentences are set up have kind of this Russian nesting doll effect going on, where you have like things inside things, inside things, inside things. Okay, well, noun clauses are very much, complex sentences are very much that way. And we have these 2 different types of clauses that are being used. And so the thing you have to understand with a complex sentence is that the main clause, the independent clause, the main part of the sentence, that one just stands by itself. It's the main part of the sentence, and it says what is going on in that sentence. Then you're going to have a dependent clause, and that dependent clause is going to have a subject and a verb and stuff in it, but it's going to have one of these introductory words like the ones that are listed here. And then that dependent clause is going to function as something else entirely. It's the Russian nesting doll effect. That dependent clause is going to be a noun or an adjective or an adverb. Okay, and that can be kind of hard to wrap your head around, but let me show you, and you'll get the hang of it. Let's go to exercise A. All the following sentences are complex sentences. 1. Underline all subjects and all verbs twice. 2. Put brackets around each dependent clause. So let's go ahead and do that. Number 1. The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is put brackets around our dependent clause because that helps categorize things nicely and neatly. And so what you have to do is look for an introductory word. And you very quickly start getting the hang of this after doing a few of these. And so the introductory word, that, is used a lot. And so we recognize that it does say that here, that hath understanding, seeketh knowledge. And so we're just going to go ahead and we're going to put a bracket around that. Okay, now the question, though, is, it's easy to get the bracket by the introductory word, but where's it supposed to end? And from the work that you did back like last week with the pronouns, this is something that we struggled with. It struggled to understand where the where these clauses ended. So basically, what we have to look for here is we have to make sure that the clause only contain, or the bracket only actually encloses one clause. And so that would be a subject, a verb, and any complements that go along with it, or descriptors that go along with it. So complements would be, predicate nominatives, predicate adjectives, direct objects, indirect objects, and then any descriptors like maybe a prepositional phrase or anything that actually belongs with that clause. Anything that does not belong with that clause does not go inside the bracket. So let's take a look. The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge. Okay, so in this case, our bracket is actually going to go right here after the word understanding. Now, why is that? It's because if we look for our verb for the main independent clause, it's this right here, seeketh. Who or what seeketh? Heart seeketh. Heart seeketh knowledge. Okay, so the dependent clause is sort of sandwiched inside of the independent clause here, and so we can't put the bracket behind seeketh or behind knowledge because that would include part of the independent clause, and that's not correct. Now we have to also find the subject and the verb inside of our dependent clause. So a subject we have here is hath. The verb is hath. Who or what hath? That hath. Okay, that's it. Okay, that is going to that's going to do it for number 1. Let's go to number 2. Actually, no, there's one more thing I want to show you. So like I was telling you earlier, the Russian nesting doll effect is totally in play here. So this clause, that hath understanding, actually is functioning as either a noun or an adjective or an adverb. So which one is it in this case? Well, in this case, it's actually an adjective. Okay, so if we dig a little bit deeper into what this sentence is saying, here we have the prepositional phrase of him. Of is a preposition, him is the object of the preposition. And then this whole clause, that hath understanding, is answering or is further describing him. So the whole thing is actually functioning as an adjective. But now that actually falls outside of what you really need to know to do well for this particular test that you're going to be taking and stuff. Because if you were to learn how to diagram complex sentences, you would need to know where exactly you need to attach these clauses. But since we're not going to be mastering that, all I want you to learn here is how to actually identify where these dependent clauses are. All right, let's go to number 2. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. Okay, now let's go ahead and find our dependent clause again. So look for an introductory word, and you're going to recognize from the list that it's the word whose name was John. So we're going to go ahead and put a bracket here, whose name was John. This one's easier because it's at the end of the sentence, and so it's not sandwiched in there like the first one was. Whose name was John? That's an easier one. And a lot of clauses are going to be like that, where they're either at the beginning or the end of a sentence, and they're not going to be it's not going to be hard to figure out where the brackets should go. All right, now let's find our subject and our verb. Subject and verbs. Okay, there was a man sent from God. There was. So was is our verb. Who or what was? There was a man sent from God whose name was John. Okay, let's see. Was is our verb. Who or what was? Name was. Okay, that's it. There we go. We're done. All right, why don't we do one more yet of these? That'd be number 3. Death is the side of life which is turned away from us. Okay, now I'm guessing by now you're starting to get the hang of this thing of where the clauses start, and you may have thought, oh, the word which. That's it. That's our introductory word. That's right. Which is turned away from us. See? There we go. Now let's find our subjects and verbs. Is our verb. Who or what is. Death is. And then back here, is our verb. Who or what is. Which is. Is turned, actually. There we go. Verb phrase. Okay, guys, that's what you need to do here in this case. Now, we have one. Don't worry about exercise B. We're crunching things in here. Don't worry about that. Okay, now, if we were working with these, with diagramming complex sentences, we would have a whole other thing to work with yet, and that would be determining if it's an adjective, adverb, or a noun clause. But we're not working with that, and so we are going to skip over page 312. Let's go now to recognizing compound complex sentences. So far, again, just to recap, we've had simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and and now we're going to dig into compound complex sentences. Also, just to map that over onto the superhero sentences, simple sentence is Superman. Compound sentence is the Avengers. Complex sentence is Batman and Robin. Now we have a mixture of Batman and Robin and the Avengers. So this is a real mess. All right, let's take a look. Number 1, a compound complex sentence contains 2 or more independent clauses. That's what makes it compound. And 1 or more dependent subordinate clauses. That's what makes it complex. 2, dependent clauses always have introductory words. We just looked at that, so I'm not going to read it again. 3, independent clauses are joined by a comma and a coordinating conjunction or by a semicolon. Well, we've learned that already. So, okay, let's move on. Let's mush. Exercise A. 1, draw a box around each comma and coordinating conjunction. Blah, 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 we know that. 2, underline each subject. Blah, blah, blah. Yep, we know that. 3, put brackets around each dependent clause. Yep. Okay, we know all this stuff. Let's dig in. Number 1, W.H. McGuffey, who was an American educator, published an excellent series of readers. His books sold over 125 million copies. Wow, that's a lot. Okay, now let's take a look. Why don't we first see if we can find any commas and coordinating conjunctions or semicolons? And sure enough, there we go. We got one. Okay, so we know this thing's going to be compound. And since they're on this page, we know they're all going to be compound complex as well. So we are putting brackets around the dependent clause. Let's go ahead and do that. And it's right here. It's who was an American educator. Okay, just like that. And let's see if there's any other. Dependent clauses. So let's look for more introductory words. Published, excellent series of readers. His books sold over. Nope, I don't think so. All right, now we can find our subjects and verbs. So let's just grab the first one here. It's gonna be published. Who or what published? William H. McGuffey published. And then the second one, it will be sold. Who or what sold? Books sold. And then we've got to find our subject and verb inside of the dependent clause yet. So that would be was. Who or what was? Who was? And we are done, ladies and gentlemen. We did it. Good. Okay, number 2. Whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. All right, let's start by finding our comma and coordinating conjunction or semicolon. Here it is, comma and coordinating conjunction, comma and the word and. Now let's look for a clause, for a dependent clause, so any introductory words. Yep, here we go. Whosoever shall exalt himself. There we go. And then we have that shall humble himself. There we go. Okay, so we've got all kinds of things going on here. So let's find our subjects and verbs now. Okay, so let's just look inside this first dependent clause, since we'll just work our way left to right. So shall exalt is our verb. Who or what shall exalt? Whosoever shall exalt. Okay, now let's go to the word shall be. That's our next verb. Now, who or what shall be? Now, this is funny because in this case, the dependent clause, whosoever shall exalt himself, is being used as a noun, and it's being used as the subject of this particular clause. And so this is a real Russian nesting doll thing going on. And it goes all the way back to this rule back here that I kind of had just said, hey, we'll deal with it later. This one right here, number 2. In some complex sentences containing a noun clause, the independent clause is not obvious because the noun clause is a part of the independent clause. That's what's going on here in this case. So actually, like if we would now be identifying the entire independent clause, that would actually be whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased. And so we have the independent clause inside of the dependent, we got the dependent clause inside of the independent clause. It's quite the deal. Okay, so what we're going to do to show that is we're going to just underline this whole thing like this. Okay? Now, let's jump to the next one. He that shall humble himself shall be exalted. So let's just go ahead and find our next verb, shall humble. Who or what shall humble? That shall humble. And then we've got shall be exalted. Shall be exalted. Who or what shall be exalted? He shall be exalted. There we go, guys. That's what we're doing. Let's do number 3 yet, and then I'll let you get 4, 5, and 6 all by yourself. A wise man knows his own ignorance. A fool thinks he knows everything. Okay? Going to make very few comments and just grab things as we go. Here's our semicolon. Okay, wise man. Let's look for any dependent clauses. Wise man knows his own ignorance. A fool thinks he knows everything. Ah, I see. Okay. So what we got going on here is there's an understood that here. A fool thinks that he knows everything. So that was the curveball here for number 3. All right, well, let's go and find our subjects and verbs. Wise man knows his own ignorance. Who or what knows? Man knows. Let's see. Thinks. Who or what thinks? Fool thinks. And then knows. And who or what knows? He knows. Okay, there we go. That'll do it. Okay, I'm going to let you get numbers 4, 5, and 6 by yourself. Now, be sure to do exercise B here at the bottom of the page as well. Okay, let's see. What are we doing? 3, 11, 3, 13. Okay, yep, that's going to conclude our lesson for today. Hope it all goes very, very well for you. So just to recap, simple sentences, subject, verb. Compound sentences, subject, verb, comma, coordinating conjunction, or semicolon, subject, verb. And then the complex sentences have a dependent and an independent clause together, and compound complex sentences mix together the compound sentences and the complex sentences. Okay, thanks very much. Have